whether the team is performing clean or unsightly. We'll cover it all here on Washington Football Nightly. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, we got our final verdict on the season. It was on the line on Sunday afternoon in Denver, and the good guys came up short. It's over. Mission failed. Season done. The mission was simple. Get me to November playing meaningful football. They fell one day short of accomplishing that goal. Our season came to an end, a bitter, cold end on Halloween night, 17-10 at the hands of the Denver Broncos. Washington football team falls to 2-6, and honestly, the competitive portion of the season went with it on Sunday, and it's so frustrating when you watch a game that you have every opportunity to win. The other team that you're playing against wants no parts of winning the football game, but yet you're not good enough to take advantage of the opportunities that are being presented to you. We had injuries that really hurt us on the offensive line. We came into the game banged up. No one wants to hear any excuses. The Broncos were just as banged up as we were, and they found a way to get it done. And when it's all said and done, they're 4-4, we're 2-6, and we have no one to blame but ourselves. So let's get to the keys to the game, and this is going to sound a lot like last week, where the keys to the game indicate that we gave ourselves a chance to win. We just didn't make winning plays. It's the same thing that happened last week. It's the same thing that happened this week. Let's get into the keys to the game. And we start with Washington's offense versus Denver's defense. Start fast. I gave us a half point for this because, honestly, they moved the ball right down the field on the opening possession of the game. They went for it on fourth down, much like last week. Unsuccessful. I thought they should have kicked the field goal, but really, what difference would it have made? It would have gotten blocked anyway. So, in hindsight, going for it probably wasn't the worst idea in the world. I don't love the play call, but again, it was poorly executed by Taylor Heinicke. You do a sprint out to the right, you've got to get rid of that football immediately. You can't wait. It's to the short side of the field, and the tight end's open right now. Ricky Seals-Jones needs it right now. Not hitch and then throw it now. And he took too long. I don't know why he hitched and then decided to throw it. The play was botched from the beginning, it looked like, and it was poorly executed. I didn't love the play call, but if executed properly, it probably could have worked. But that's nor here nor there. They moved the ball on that opening possession, okay? The defense got a stop. The offense got the ball back again, and they moved it again. And this time, the field goal was blocked. So I thought the offense started fast. They just didn't put up any points. So because of the lack of points, they get a half a point, but they did move the football. And once again, for the second consecutive week, Tressway was really a non-factor in the game because this offense moved the football proficiently. So start fast. They did that. They moved it on each of their first two possessions of the game, got in the scoring range, but just like last week, came up with 0 points. Protect the Duke. No points at all for this one. 2 interceptions by Heinicke, really both of no consequence. I shouldn't say no, of little to no consequence, because one came essentially as a Hail Mary right before the half. The other on a desperation fourth down play where you just got to give your team a chance. You just throw it up there and see what the hell happens. It got picked off. It seemed like that was all she wrote and the game was over, but the defense would force a turnover and give the offense essentially right back the football with a chance to tie the game back up, and they failed to do that as well. So there were also 2 fumbles in the game, both by Taylor Heinicke. Both were recovered by Washington, but still, that wasn't a good enough job of protecting the Duke. Coming off of a week where this team fumbled 4 times, the emphasis to protect the football was paramount, and we still put it on the ground twice. That's unacceptable. Again, we recovered both of them, but still, you don't want to put yourself in that position where if the ball bounces in a different direction, we're screwed. So 2 turnovers, 2 near turnovers, not good enough. We did not protect the Duke. Go with what works. I gave us a full point for this one. I thought that going into the game, Terry McLaurin wasn't going to be able to dominate. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later on. But specifically, I said the Broncos have been an equal opportunity offender. You can run it against them. You can throw it against them. And that we did. We hit 100 yards rushing in this game. We averaged over 4 yards a pop. We had really good production out of Jared Patterson, who led the team in rushing in this football game. Antonio Gibson on his limited carries, very effective, 8 carries, 34 yards. So that's, over 4 yards a pop for him as well. And so was Patterson, 11 for 49. So both of those guys were ultra effective. Then you had Terry with a nice little 15, 16, 17-yard run sprinkled in there. Heineke had 1 carry himself. So they spread out. McKissick had 3 carries. So they spread that out, and it was very effective. But then they threw it, and that was effective too. Not effective enough to score more points, which it should have been. But I thought that, we were balanced because everything was working. Finished drives, red zone efficiency. I mean, that was the backbreaker last week, along with turnovers. That was the backbreaker this week, along with blocked field goals. So you got to finish drives, man. Again, I feel like a broken record, and this was something we suffered from last year, just simply not scoring enough points. I didn't think this would be an issue after the first 4 weeks of the season, where in 3 of the first 4 games we had scored, or 2 of the first 4 games we had scored up over 30, and in one of those games we scored 21. We got our brains bashed in that game, and we scored 21 points. So, I was thinking this is going to be a season where, the defense may struggle, but the offense is going to give us a chance. Well, now the defense is giving us a chance each and every single week, and the offense is falling flat on its face. For the 3rd straight week, Washington fails to score north of 13 points. In 3 respective weeks, we've scored 13, 10, and 10. That will beat no one in this league, and that's why in that stretch of football, we are currently 0-3. And so it's really frustrating when you look at the production that this offense has had from a yardage standpoint, from a moving the football standpoint, but it's not showing up on the scoreboard, and that's where it matters most. 0 of 2 in the red zone in this game, 0 of 4 last week versus Green Bay, for a combined 0 of 6 in the last 2 weeks. That's losing football. Any way you slice it, you're going to lose football games with that kind of inefficiency in the red zone, and not to mention 2 block kicks in this game to go with 1 block kick a week ago against Green Bay. So 3 block kicks. You could go 5 years and not have 3 field goal attempts blocked. We've had 3 blocked in the last 2 weeks, which is just a travesty. I mean, in 7 years, I don't know if Dustin Hopkins has had 3 kicks blocked for the Washington football team. Okay? Going back to when we were the Redskins / Washington football team. I think you combine his 7 years of service for Washington, I don't know if he's had 3 kicks blocked. It's pathetic is what it is. And just like this offense in the red zone or in scoring position once they get into the plus 30 of things. So just really disappointing to see this team move the football in the manner that they have the last 2 weeks, but fail to put any points on the scoreboard to really see the fruits of their labor kind of, bleed over into the scoreboard. So all hands on deck was the final key to the game offensively for the Washington football team. And I gave them a 1 for that because, as I mentioned earlier, I knew Terry wasn't going to be dominant in this game. They were going to put Patrick Surtain II on him. Not to say that Surtain's a lockdown corner and they were going to sick Terry, but they knew we didn't have anybody else. And Surtain was going to get the task of, guarding Terry, but they were also going to give him some help in certain instances, and I'm pretty sure they did. Without watching film, I can't say for certain, but I'd venture to say that they did their best to try to take Terry away because they knew he was our number 1 option. And so other guys are going to have to step up, and that they did. 9 different guys caught passes in this game. 5 different guys toted the rock in this game. Terry McLaurin was like the 4th or 5th, highest targeted receiver in this game. And I shouldn't say targeted. I think he was like 4th in receptions in this game in terms of the amount. J.D. McKissick led the team with 8 receptions in this game. And I just felt like they did a really good job of spreading the ball around. They didn't force it to Terry. If he wasn't open, they didn't force it to him. And so I thought all hands were on deck. They were prepared to spread the wealth. DeAndre Carter stepping in, getting a big catch for a touchdown. Adam Humphries, as always, gets one or two big catches, but should have more. I've said this, and I'm going to continue to say this. He needs more opportunities because he's always open. He's always open every single week. So I guarantee you when the film is watched, that didn't change this week either. So I thought all hands were on deck. Needless to say, Jared Patterson stepped up as a running back in this game. Everybody chipped in and contributed as a skill guy. Hell, we even had a John Bates sighting. He had a reception as well. So it was good to see all hands being on deck. So you tally all of that up, and it's a 2.5 on the offensive side. Now let's see what happened defensively for Washington versus this Broncos offense. The first key was to set the tone early. I gave them a full point for that. I thought they did exactly that. The first drive wasn't the greatest. Denver moved the football, but when it got time for Denver to try to get some points, they started going in reverse. Some of that was because of the defense. Some of it was their own doing. But at the end of the day, they had to punt the football. They got nothing out of that opening drive. They got nothing out of their second drive. And it wasn't until the midpoint of the second quarter where the top was finally popped on the game and the scoring, and the Broncos got on the scoreboard with the field goal. So they set the tone early. They got after Teddy Bridgewater. They harassed him. They slowed down the run game, and they gave the offense ample opportunities to get on the scoreboard first in this game, and they just failed to do so. Second key defensively, tackle. I gave us a half point for this because while I thought the tackling was solid in this game, I thought it could have been better. There were times where we missed tackles and we allowed guys to get yards after contact, and you just don't want to see it. I thought Landon Collins was exceptional in this game, and he limited a lot of guys from yards after contact, but that wasn't always the case in this game, and so for that reason, we get a half point on tackle. Key number 3, force Teddy Bridgewater to beat you. I thought we did a good job of that, and hence we have a 1 on force Teddy Bridgewater to beat you. Now, Teddy Two Gloves did exactly that. He beat us, but that's what we had to do. We couldn't allow the run game to hurt us. And even though they rushed for over 100 yards and they rushed for 4.0 yards, and I think that we held them slightly under 100 yards, but they still rushed for 4 yards a carry. It doesn't matter. The yardage that they got was not insignificant. They scored a rushing touchdown. They made some plays on the ground, but in the grand scheme of things, it didn't. The run game really didn't put them in a bunch of advantageous short yardage situations, which was the biggest fear. 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 2. We didn't want Denver living in those down and distance situations because that's where Teddy Bridgewater flourishes, because he wants to check it down. He wants to throw it underneath. So if you let them be in 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, that's an easy conversion for him. If it's 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, you saw what they're going to do, and I told you what they were going to do, which is check it down and hope that somebody breaks the tackle. One time they did, several other times they did not. Eliminate the big play. Got a full point on that one too. We didn't give up a single. This might be the first game all season long where we didn't give up some sort of big play. I can't recall what happened against the Chargers and whether we gave up a big play or not in that game. But every game thereafter, there was at least one chunk play given up by this defense. And so it had been probably since week 2, or maybe even week 1, the last time we didn't give up a big play. Definitely gave one up to the Giants. Definitely gave several up to the Bills. Definitely gave one up to the Falcons and the Saints. Chiefs got a big one as well. And last week, the Packers really didn't, even though Devontae Adams got over the top of Kendall Fuller, even though it was tremendous coverage by Fuller, still got him for about a good 20, I think it was a 26-yard completion. But that's nothing compared to what we're usually giving up. So I thought we eliminated the big play, and that was part of the reason that the Broncos didn't score a ton of points. Is they had to earn everything they get, and they're just not a good enough offense to have to go the full length of the field without the aid of a big play or penalties to help them out. And then finally, turnovers in short fields. I struggled with this one, whether it was 0 or a half. Until that turnover late on the final possession of the game, really for Denver, where Chase Young was able to poke it free, this was a 0. You know, we didn't generate any turnovers, and the defense really didn't create any short fields. When Denver punted the ball, once it was they punted 3 times, and just about every single time that ball was caught inside the 10, sometimes inside the 5-yard line. So didn't create short fields by getting off the field 3 and out. And they didn't generate any turnovers, you know, until the very end of the game. It would have been nice to have gotten that opportunity Bobby McCain dropped on the opening possession, and that would have really given this offense a spark and given this defense more confidence, and he dropped it. But that's what bad teams do. They miss opportunities. They drop interceptions, and they don't scoop up fumbles and score. So that's where we are with ours right now. But when it's all said and done, you get 4 on the defensive side. You tally that up plus the 2.5 on the offensive side, and it's a grand total of 6.5 out of 10. Which again, I think it was something in that neighborhood, maybe 6 out of 10, maybe 6.5 again out of 10. That's an opportunity to win. You know, you get anything north of, I always say north of 5, and you got a shot. Anything north of 6, and you should win the game. And that's the second week we've been in that window and haven't been able to get it done. And that's frustrating because the Broncos, as I mentioned, gave us every opportunity we could ask for to win this game, and we simply just didn't take advantage. And that hurts, especially when your season's on the line as ours was, and to not, you know, seize the opportunity in the moment, really frustrating. Really, really frustrating. So let's get to in other news. And I thought Ron Rivera was as candid as I've heard him all season long. There were a lot of good nuggets from his day after presser. And so we'll save that for the end. Let's get to a couple of other discussions. First, let's knock out the NFC East and a checkup there. So Dallas with an improbable win. No Dak Prescott, no problem. Cooper Rush to the rescue. He shows up, throws for 325 yards and the game-winning score with about 30 seconds left to defeat the Minnesota Vikings 20-16. So they get the win. They're now 6-1, and they're continuing to keep the pressure on the rest of this division to win, just to keep some semblance of pace, just to be able to see them still in the rearview mirror, or be seen, I should say, in the rearview mirror. You know, one more win and a loss by the Eagles or the Giants tonight, and essentially Dallas is looking in their rear view and they don't see anyone. You know, right now the Eagles just came over the hill, so they can kind of see the Eagles off in the distance. The Giants have a chance to join the Eagles, and unfortunately we're not even in the picture right now with our loss. So Eagles get a massive 44-6 victory over the Lions. They destroy them in every way imaginable. And so now they're 3-5. They're feeling good about themselves, and they're right in the mix for that 7th and final wild card spot. And their schedule is starting to lighten up, so it's going to give them an opportunity to reel off some wins. We'll see if they can take advantage of that or not. As far as the Giants are concerned, they're 2-5 with a chance to get to 3-5, and that would throw their name in the hat for that 7th and final wild card spot as well. Got to get to 9. I think that's the magic number. And so 3 at this point of the season gives you a shot. You know, anything less than that, you're really, really pushing it. So Dallas is in first. Philadelphia is now in second via their win at 3-5. Washington is in third at 2-5, the Giants are now in third at 2-5. Meanwhile, Washington bringing up the rear at 2-6. So, injury update. Ron Rivera talked about some injuries briefly. Again, you know, he doesn't come with the report ready. He does it after his presser, so he doesn't have to give any clarification on injuries and things of that nature. So Ron talked about the offensive line in particular, said that Charles Leno was fine, and we heard from him after the game. He looked to be fine, but you know how it is. Adrenaline's flowing, and you think everything's okay, but, you know, the blood settles, swelling starts to incur, and all of a sudden you got issues on your hands. So we'll see what happens with the injury front. But the word out on the street is we averted disaster with Eric Flowers. Reportedly, no structural damage, nothing major. It seems like we have avoided a major setback with him. They feared that there could be some damage to his knee. There was not. So that's the initial prognosis. That could change, but right now it seems like we may have dodged a bullet with him. As far as Chase Rouillet is concerned, not so lucky. He's seeking a second opinion, and generally when players seek second opinions, it's because they didn't like what they heard with the first opinion, which is usually correct. He suffered a fractured fibula, which, if that is in fact the case, is going to end his season. He'll require surgery for that, and that'll be it for him in the 2021 campaign, which at this point doesn't really matter. We're just playing out the string now anyhow. So that's an update on the injury situation. And Ryan Fitzpatrick scheduled for an MRI next week, so no updates on him until we get the results of that MRI. But let's get to what Ron Rivera had to say from his office today. I thought he had some really strong words and some really impactful things to say. One of the most notable things that he mentioned was the fact that the quarterback position is the single biggest, discussion they're having internally right now. And he said, look, we're trying to figure out if we got that guy on the roster or not. If we don't, then we got to make something happen in free agency and or the draft. So, that's the most important thing. And he said, we would much rather just continue to build this team and then find that quarterback, similar to the way Buffalo, and he keeps referring to Buffalo's methodology and how they've done things, because as I mentioned, there's a lot of Carolina Panthers influence in Buffalo and it's working for them. So Ron sees that model and he'd like to kind of replicate that. So he talked about that again, which we've talked about numerous times, because that's the roster building method that I subscribe to, is build up the infrastructure, drop the quarterback inside, and let's get ready to ride. But easier said than done, because you still got to find that guy. Ron also answered a question that I don't think he's ever answered before, not like this at least, and that was in terms of, should this team have drafted a quarterback in last year's draft? And he was like, nah, we're good. The players that were there we liked, but he said we weren't willing to pay the cost to be the boss, essentially. We weren't willing to pay what it was going to take to move up. We weren't willing to give them the draft capital they were seeking, and we weren't willing to give them, any of the players that they were asking about. So that's the first time I've heard that the price was too steep, which ultimately leads me back to my initial reaction to us not moving, which was, they obviously didn't love a guy enough to go and get him, because you can't be deterred when you want something. If you want a guy bad enough, you'll figure out a way to get that done. If both parties have a mutual interest, you'll find a way to get that done. Even if you got to give up something that you really don't want to give up, if you want the guy bad enough, you'll give it up. And I don't think they wanted Mac Jones or Justin Fields bad enough to give up what it was going to take. Meanwhile, I think they would have done a hell of a lot more for the first three quarterbacks taken. But that's no here nor there. Ron did make mention of it. I thought that was interesting. He also talked about the field goal kicking situation. And he said, look, that's on me. I made this decision. He also went on to say, and I found this pretty ironic, that good field goal kickers are hard to find. Consistent ones are hard to find. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, duh. He said, there's not a lot of good kickers out on the streets this time of the year. All the good kickers are on teams. Yeah, duh, Ron, which is why I didn't want you to do what you did. You're answering and essentially making my point for me. But that's nor here nor there. He said that, on Blewett's kicks, he's striking the ball too high up, more so in the middle than at the bottom where he's supposed to kick it. So it's something that can be fixed. He's going to have to work at it. But when asked about Blewett's position and is he still the kicker, he said, for now. So that's not a ringing endorsement. And that's essentially Ron saying, maybe I made a mistake here. We'll find out. Maybe it'll be too late by the time they find out. But he did acknowledge the fact that, hey, this is a move I decided to make, and I'll live with the consequences. I thought another interesting answer from Ron was a question posed about how he felt like the free agents were faring, from this past off season. And he said, he really likes how some of the guys are playing and the draft picks as well, not just the free agents. So let me rephrase that. He was asked about the offseason and the guys that they got via the draft and free agency, specifically the free agents, though. And he went down the list of every free agent, and he talked about guys playing well, this guy playing good, this guy playing great, this guy giving us a chance. He talked about, Jamin Davis needing to learn a lot more, but, being pleased with where he is, but needing to learn a lot more. He loved Sam Cosmi, felt like he was the most ready of all the rookies, and was playing at the highest level of all the rookies. He talked about Benjamin St. Juice and how he's coming into his own, which we all can see Juice is really getting comfortable. He talked about De'Ami Brown having a long way to go, having the knowledge of what teams are going to try to do to him, more specifically be physical with him at the line of scrimmage. He talked about John Bates, said, look, I've been really impressed with John Bates since getting the opportunity with Logan out. He's done nothing but what we've asked him to do, and he's been fantastic in that role. So talked about him, and that was pretty much the extent of that question. So it was cool to hear him go in that order. Then he talked about a lot of the free agents, talked about Bobby McCain and Charles Leno solidifying the left side. He talked about, all of the additions, William Jackson III needing more time as he is adjusting to a brand new system. So there's a lot that you can glean from what Rivera said today. And I thought it was a really productive post or a day after presser. One more caveat. He's like, look, we got 9 games left. He actually had a question that was, addressed to the fans, essentially, where Darren Haynes asked him, I think it wasn't Darren Haynes. I think it was, I can't remember his name, but he was asked essentially, what do you say to the fans that, are disappointed in the way this season has gone, essentially, and aren't here, are off the bandwagon, essentially, for lack of a better term. I can't remember the exact phrase. And Ron was like, look, we got to win. At the end of the day, we got to win, and that'll bring fans out. But he's like, either you're going to roll with this or you're not. You're like, you either going to ride or you're not going to ride. Like, I'm not going to force anybody to root for the team. So you could tell he was just slightly annoyed by that question because he's like, at this point, I don't really give a shit. And then he regurgitated that thing he said 25 million times this offseason, and I've said it because he said it, which is it takes 3 to 5 years to change a culture in the military. And so he's still banking on that. And I told you that's part of Ron's plan. But the plan will not work, I can assure you, without a quarterback. And that's why it is paramount that they find that guy sooner rather than later. Don't know when they find that guy, but I think it's got to be this offseason. So that essentially is in other news, and that's going to do it for Washington Football Nightly. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. I am a Washington fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Washington spirit will never die. Washington spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, hail to our beloved Washington football team. I will tell you this. The goal is to get started on these QBs. We'll see how much time I have in terms of the World Series and things of that nature. But the goal is to start the quarterbacks on this bye week. And we'll see how much of it we can get done so that we can have a discussion about this crop of quarterbacks and what I think of this group as a whole and some of these players as individuals. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Until next time, you guys take care. And it's sad, man. Sad when your season's over on October 31st. But have no one to blame but ourselves. We did it to ourselves. Till next time, have a good one.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap. Hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone.